Educational inequality has and continues to be a pervasive issue within the United States. Nationwide, the disparity in the quality, budget, and outcome in education has shown to be persistent. It especially negatively affects those in lower income communities and minority students. With a 2019 study conducted by the National Center for Education Statistics citing that only 82% of Hispanic students graduate on time, only 80% of Black students, and 74% of Native American students. This is compared to the 89% of white students graduating during the same time period. In 2019, lower income students completed high school at a rate of 80%, whereas middle to higher income students graduated at a rate of 91%. It is important to look at the national statistics as it provides insight into key problems with education which can be addressed broadly across our nation. However, it is the school districts themselves that experience inequality face to face and are the first to respond when facing educational issues. It is because of this direct effect that districts have on their students and the education they receive that it becomes important to view educational inequality from a municipal and local perspective as well. There are systemic problems relating to inequality that exist nationally, but without understanding the unique problems that states and school districts face on a grassroots level, it can become difficult to help students and families equitably. Mecklenburg is the second largest county by population in North Carolina and has been rapidly growing and developing for decades now. This expansion, the county and the city of Charlotte within it have seen, has brought jobs and wealth. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, or CMS, likewise, is big and is the 17th largest school district in the U.S., with over 140,000 students enrolled as of 2017. Over half of the schools in the district are what CMS describes as high poverty, with 25 to 50% being considered moderate poverty and 0 to 25% considered low poverty. These statistics come from CMS's 2019 Breaking the Link report, which provides information and insight into the district's problems and performance overall. The disparity in graduation rates alone is striking, with 93% of students in low poverty schools graduating at high school on time, compared to the measly 65% of students at high poverty schools. The racial disparity here is also apparent, because even within the low poverty schools in CMS, white students are 8% more likely to graduate than Black students, and 10% more likely than Hispanic students. These are somewhat similar to the national statistics, however, the inequality is seen even more pronounced, with low poverty schools performing better than the national average, but high poverty schools performing lower. Of course, graduation rates are not the only indicator of success, however, they provide understanding into the school's basic function, and if only 65% of the students in high poverty schools are graduating on time, there are clearly problems that the schools are experiencing on a functional level. The issues outside of education and budget that relate to these statistics, and looking at them in a vacuum alone would make it difficult to solve these problems. Yet, quality education still plays a major role in bringing people out of poverty. When lower income students are not receiving quality education, opportunities such as jobs, higher education, and informational resources become harder to find, and it becomes increasingly difficult to escape poverty. Education is often referred to as the great equalizer, but it can only equalize us if the education we are receiving is not only sufficient, but equal as well. When we don't have equal and equitable education, the students who exist in poor performing and lower budgeted schools are no longer defined by their potential as human beings, but rather restrained by the environment that surrounds them. CMS, as shown, is not alone in these problems, broadly speaking, but the problems that need to be solved within it need to be solved through a lens of understanding the unique, diverse, racial, and socioeconomic makeup of the district and the students and people in it. We now speak with Elise Dashu, a chairperson on the CMS Board of Education. She received a degree in anthropology at Brown University and has served on the board since 2015. She has faced inequality within her own education in California and offers perspective on the differences in quality of education regionally. We also discuss the educational inequality in CMS and solutions that will bring Mecklenburg County towards a more equitable future. So, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Elise Dashu, and I serve as an at-large representative on the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education, and what that means is that no matter where in Mecklenburg County you live, I serve you. And I am the chair of the school board, and I've been in that position since just before COVID started, so December of 2019.
Have you experienced education inequality face to face?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I have.
Could you please elaborate more on that?
If you're talking about in my personal history, not here in Charlotte, but in Southern California, I experienced it in my own high school, because Southern California is extremely segregated. We always talk about that being a problem in the South, but it's everywhere. In fact, less so in the South in some ways than in other parts of the country. And then being on a parent in CMS and then being on the school board in CMS, it is a systemic issue that is sort of baked into our society, baked into our housing patterns, and baked into our schools. And so it takes a lot of work and humility to try to be, open to understanding it, instead of sometimes it's invisible because you've taken it for granted for so long. Seeing where those barriers are that are unfair, that are keeping students, giving some students a fast lane to opportunity and other students all these roadblocks to opportunity. And then we've got to try to identify those roadblocks and dismantle them. That's a lot of work, but yeah, I've seen it in CMS. You can see it in, you can see it in the schools where we have really concentrated poverty, and kids come to, lots of kids, their parents are experiencing homelessness, and all kinds of trauma. And they don't have books at home, and they don't have computers at home, and they bring all of those challenges to school with them, and they're expected to perform at the exact same level as everybody else. Or they're judged as being not as bright or not as smart as other people because they don't do as well on test scores. But these kids are every bit as brilliant as the kids going to schools where their parents are getting them tutors, and they've got computers, and they're going on to summer camps. And so it's we've got to recognize that. We've got to put more resources into the schools where the kids don't have those resources at home. And we've got to have high expectations for all of our students and understand that they're all capable of being brilliant. And that's easier said than done, but that's what we're working on.
As you said earlier, education inequality is a nationwide problem, and many may argue that its most significant problems can only be solved at a federal level. That said, what are some major actions that have been taken by CMS to combat it?
Yeah, that's a good question, because a lot of it is controlled at the federal level. A lot of it is controlled at the state level. Sometimes we can take local actions and then the state will say, "Nuh-uh, we don't like that," and they'll undo those actions. But I will say one local action that we have taken this is within our purview, is with our magnet schools. When students apply to a magnet, we have a way of, based on where you live and looking at census numbers, we can sort of guesstimate the income level and other demographic, sort of financial demographic statistics for that neighborhood or that census block. And then that helps impact whether or not you can get into the school if more people are applying to the school than we have spaces for. And so the goal is to have a third of the lowest economic, the middle, and the highest. And that helps us give equal access to the opportunities that are in our magnet schools. And it also helps students. It's like my kids went to schools that were very diverse, and they learned as much from their fellow students who had different home lives, different backgrounds, different cultures at home. They learned as much from their fellow students as from their teachers. And so it really prepared them well for the world that they're living in now that they graduated. So that's one example.
Is there anything you think would benefit the district involving academic inequality?
I think the most powerful and impactful thing that we can do, it's not very like headline grabbing. It's kind of sounds boring, but it's that the school board has to do its job in governance really well. And what that means is we have to stay very focused on the academics. We have to set very clear goals for the superintendent, and then hold the superintendent accountable for putting together a strategy to achieve those goals. And we have to be clear about our expectations and prioritize, like, here are the 4 things we're focused on. There's a whole lot of other whirlwinds out there, but we're going to focus most of our attention on these 4 things, and then check in every month, progress monitoring. How are you doing, superintendent? How's the district doing? Are we on track? If so, what is there anything we need to double down on to accelerate the improvement? Are we off track? If so, what strategies are you going to change to get us on track? And that takes a lot of discipline, and that actually is a skill set that the school board has had to learn, but we've really dedicated ourselves to developing that skill set in the last couple of years. And I think if we continue on that path, it's going to make a big difference for academic inequality in CMS. As long as that's a goal and a priority for the school board, which it is now, and it's got to reflect the priorities of the community. I think that is a priority of our community. But we're getting ready this summer. We'll be going out and doing community engagement to sort of double check that, because we're getting ready to put together a new strategic plan for the next 4 years. But yeah, that is absolutely the number one most powerful thing we can do to make a difference with academic inequality, in my opinion.
You were talking about magnet schools earlier, and some may argue that the new busing situation with magnet schools is furthers the academic inequality within CMS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, boy, the express stops, that is a really tough situation. And the situation there is that we have expanded our magnets so much that when you add up the number of buses and the number of stops that we're serving, we're we're the 17th, I've got to get this statistic straight, we're the 17th largest district in the nation, but we are one of the biggest transportation fleets in the nation. And I don't have that exact statistic, but the numbers are astounding. And when you look at the increasing labor problems with being able to hire and hold on to bus drivers who can make so much more money working as truck drivers with the same license or working for CATS, when you look at that, it's just getting, and just the costs, it's getting to where it's unsustainable. And then you combine it with it's turning into ridiculously long drives for students, and that's inequity too. Mm-hmm. Where like, okay, if your parents can drive you, you can get there, but if your parents can't drive you, maybe you're getting up at 4:30 in the morning, or so it's really like a catch-22. and we're kind of forced into looking at these express stops. And what I'm hoping is that once we get everybody's data in, with technology that we have today that we didn't have back when we were doing shuttle stops, there ought to be a way to set up ride shares, carpools in a way that's, you know, more efficient, or even like micro bus stops, or like maybe CMS can, I'm not making any promises, this is just sort of brainstorming, but maybe CMS can have like minivans in addition to the bus stops that go pick people up. You know, maybe we can hire teacher assistants to help drive those, since TAs have part-time jobs, and then make the TAs full-time. You know, it's like, but as far as maintaining the status quo, it's just it's just turning into something that's going to be really, really hard to do, and we anticipate the labor shortage getting worse. And so, I mean, I'm worried there's going to be even more hard decisions to come after this one. But so that's where that's coming from.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you.